Hey everybody, welcome back to this show. Thank you for joining me this week. As you can see, no video. Having some iPhone issues. Take it as a point of pride, really, that I can't figure out my iPhone. Well, I did the software update last week, and ever since then, nothing's really working as well as it's supposed to. And I'm not exactly sure why, so I'll get that figured out, and we'll have video for you next week. This week, it's just my voice. Sorry, ladies. See, you don't get the full humor of that joke when you don't see my face make that contort itself in its hilarious way. That joke is only 55% funny. If you're not laughing, it's because you can't see me on video. Okay, enough excuses. Let's talk about you and your psychology. What's really going on? What's the issue? What really is the issue? You can't get a girlfriend? You're isolated? Chronic masturbation do you have going on there? Can't find a girlfriend, can't find a boyfriend, want a husband, want a wife, can't figure out how to do it. It's all the same issue. Whatever your issue going on, it's all the same issue. We're all dealing with the same emotions. It's just like Mad Libs. Different adjectives, different nouns. Otherwise, it's all the same. We have the same psyche. Get it? So we manage the issue in the same way. The trick is to figure out the building blocks, the fundamental premises, the principles of psychology. Work on those principles, work on those blocks. Whatever the issue is, it works itself out eventually. I know it will. The only variables I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. I say 5 years. It's really less than 5 years. You're in the process of the change. Way before 5 years. We can do it in 6 weeks, no problem. Doesn't mean the entire change is fully finished. But it really depends on, how consistent you are, how consistent you're going to apply these principles, how consistently you're going to talk through the issue in the right way, how consistently you're going to be aware of reality. You're going to continue to be ever more aware of reality. And also probably to some extent your neuroticism, which is the one personality trait that I think is part of who you are. Not introversion, not extroversion. These are adaptive ways of dealing with the world in a maladaptive way. Just not the best way to deal with the world. Some of us deal with the world through introversion by turning in on ourselves. Some of us deal with it by surrounding ourselves with others. It's both the result of the same thing. We're uncomfortable with something. So we avoid it. Some of us avoid it in one way, some of us avoid it in other ways. It's all the same thing, though. The healthy psyche, you want to be alone and you want to be around other people. You're energized by both. Just one of my many controversial beliefs. If you're tuning in for the first time, sorry about that. Haven't got the microphone set up here. Yeah, this is strange. Just talking to my laptop. Can't believe I used to do this way before. Well, anyways, we'll get back to it next week once I figure out more issues. Like I said, you don't want to hear about that. But yeah, your issue, what you're working on, we all work on it through the same way. And I think this is a principle that we need to incorporate if we're going to solve this homeless problem. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. I know you probably don't live in California because you're not an idiot. No, I like California. There's just some things that aren't going so well. The governor Gavin Newsom maybe not so intelligent, but that's okay. He's dealing with the same things that we're dealing with, and he has put out a solution yesterday. Today's Thursday. Put out a solution yesterday to solve the homeless problem in California, particularly San Francisco. Whew. I was in there a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's I don't know if I talked about that, but all the news reports saying how bad the homeless problem is in San Francisco, they're not lying. I mean, there are some sections of the city. I mean, yeah, you can, if you have a lot of money, you can still live in a section of the city that is a veritable paradise. But I don't know. I would say at least 2/3 of the city. I just maybe not go. I mean, unless you really like the smell of tinkle. But yeah, $1.4 billion to solve this homeless crisis is going to pay monthly rents, build more shelters, and provide treatment for those struggling to find long-term housing. yeah, you know what? This is just more of the same. This is exactly the kind of thinking behind the homeless problem in the first place. We're incentivizing homelessness. We're looking at the symptom and essentially incentivizing the symptom, not digging deeper to what's really going on. And look, we can criticize Gavin Newsom for this, but we do this all the time. What I started off the show talking about. You think your situation's special. It's not special. You can't talk to the girl in math class. You can't ask her out because you think that the problem is talking to the girl. You don't see it as this conceptual issue. You can't see the fundamental premises behind the issue of, oh, there's this girl in math class and I just can't go talk to her. And now I find myself watching YouPorn all weekend. Can't see the problem conceptually. You can't see the problem as a system. And until we understand homelessness as a failure of our psychological, of the way that we view psychology, in effect, of the left's failure in their view of psychology, and this isn't just to criticize the left, there was a failure in the right's way. I call it the left and the right. These are, heuristics that, don't exactly describe the philosophy behind these two views of mental illness. But, sorry, I got distracted by something there. But yeah, but it's just a helpful way to think about it. So that was the problem with institutions, with mental health institutions back in the early 20th century, which is what led to the deinstitutionalization of, the vast majority of our mental health patients in the first place. It wasn't working that well. We had this view of mental health, and this is, the right's blind spot in mental health. Oh, if you have a problem, just fix it. If you can't fix it, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can really do about it. Let's give you a lobotomy. And that'll be it. We'll just put you away in a cell somewhere and pretty much forget about you. You can't be integrated into society. That is a failure to understand emotions for what they are. That is a failure to see emotions as the cause of our behavioral issues. But the left has their own blind spot when it comes to mental illness, and it is portrayed, and we can see the manifestation of it in cities that are controlled by the left and have been for a long time, notably San Francisco. And that blind spot is, hey, you're just like everybody else. What's mental illness anyways? It's just a different way of doing something. Oh, you're walking down the street with your pants off. That's just a different way of walking down the street. Oh, you're evacuating your bowels between an S class and a 3 series. Well, that's just a different way of doing it. What's the big deal? Do you need care? Society's let you down. But this is a failure of understanding emotions too. Supposedly, the more emotionally open philosophy, the left, more progressive, emotionally open. You're actually not emotionally open. You're just in denial of what emotions are and how they work, and how that it can be a way of dealing with them. And if somebody is behaving in a way that doesn't exactly align with reality, it could be an emotional issue. So until we see this problem as this faulty, sorry about that, this faulty view of looking at emotions, we're never going to solve it. If we're just going to throw $1.4 billion at the problem, we're going to create more issues because it doesn't get to the root of it. These people need health care. These people need mental health care, and we have abdicated that responsibility. As somebody in the mental health industry, I will blame myself for this as well. We have abdicated the responsibility. These people have an issue, and I'm sure a lot of them could be assimilated into society, but we got to look at emotions for what they are and treat the issue for what it is. And there's a way to do this. Nobody wants to hear it, but there's a way to do it. It's not going to be more money. It's going to be less money. We don't have to fire prison guards or anything. We don't have to fire anybody. I know the difficult thing with changing around the way that the public sector works is, okay, first you have to deal with the union issue and like a prison guard's pension, right? Well, there's a way to do this without even touching that. You abolish prisons. That's what you do. And people get all bristly when I say things like that because they think, oh, so you want murderers walking out on the street? No, but you abolish prisons, and instead of prisons, you have mental health hospitals. Gee, isn't that funny? We had to build all these prisons. Oh, for whatever reason. When we started the deinstitutionalization in 1955, right after that, are we connecting the dots here? Right after that, we had to start building all these prisons. Now we have a prison issue. Now we have people in prison who aren't getting the help that they need. I mean, we're starting that. We're actually doing better now than even we were 10 years ago. There's like job training, things like that, which is definitely part of the rehabilitation. But without a psychological rehabilitation, it's not going to be helpful. And one of the reasons we're not doing the psychological rehabilitation right now is because, we just don't know how to give that many people direct mental health treatment. And I would say that is a problem until you start to see all of our emotional issues as exactly the same, right? Just change out the adjectives and nouns like a Mad Lib, and it's exactly the same. This is when you direct group therapy through this way, then you can have a lot of different people with a lot of different problems coming together, working on their issues together, and it's not going to take much to train these therapists. That may be part of the resistance to seeing our psychology this way, is because the more simple we see our psychology, if we could, let's just say, hypothetically, if we could break our psychology down to a few moving parts, a lot of the complexity in the psychology industry goes away, and psychologists, in effect, lose their power. We don't need as many of you. The therapist becomes relegated to a paralegal. I don't know. Something like that. Like, you do need training to do it, but the amount of training, even just to run a group in a mental institution, it could take maybe a couple weeks, at most a month, maybe 2 months. Great job for grad students. What do grad students sit around and complain about? Oh, I didn't get placed in any internship. Oh, I got to wait a few more months. Well, here you go. You want some real experience? Get people together who are murderers. People who do just really terrible things. Why are they doing it? Is it morally wrong? Sure. I don't know. I guess so. But that's a philosophical question. Why? Why would somebody act out in violence? Why would somebody evacuate their bowels in between an S class and a 3 series? Let's figure this out. Get them to start talking. If they can't talk, get them to start listening. I mean, we do this right now. This isn't that new. The only problem is how do we get this amount of health care to all these people for a relatively inexpensive price? Well, you got to start looking at psychology in a different way. How do we get transportation? It's 1855. How do we get transportation to people on the East Coast, get them to the West Coast? Well, you could keep doing the horse and buggy thing. Well, that's expensive, right? That costs a lot of lives. Okay, well, what if you build a railroad? You have to start looking at transportation in a different way. Same thing we have the same issue going on now. We can't keep doing the horse and buggy thing. Got to start building railroads. You got to start getting a horseless carriage, now known as the automobile. Keep the prison guards on. They can guard the groups. Obviously, if these people have a history of violence, they're going to be much more likely to commit violence. We still need prison guards there. And you'll be in therapy hours a day. This is the idea. People need to keep talking. People need to keep listening. The prisoners, they won't be called prisoners anymore, but mental health inmates, patients. Okay, you're pooping on 3rd Avenue. Okay. You can't reality test properly. And they're great tests for this. You're acting out in violence, and you're even to the point of killing somebody. That is one level of an inability to reality test. You're so out of touch with yourself. The neurosis gets so bad that it becomes psychosis. Okay, well, there's a way back from that. But it's going to involve a lot of directed care and not one-on-one care. Doesn't need to be that. In a way, you're unifying to solve the homeless problem, to solve the overcrowded prison problem. You're unifying these two halves of man, the conscious and the unconscious, the spiritual and the material. We just did away with the conscious part in 1950s when we got rid of the mental health care system. I'm not saying that we ran it properly back then, but we just got rid of it. Oh, this isn't running well. Let's just get rid of it. Give people Thorazine. Oh, that permanently damaged their brains. Yeah, that's another thing you have to get rid of. You have to get rid of antipsychotic drugs. We just got rid of it. Well, that's not what you do. I mean, that's the postmodernism solution. Oh, these two halves of the psyche, these two halves of our cultural psyche, we can't connect them. Well, let's get rid of one in favor of the other. Let's get rid of the spiritual in favor of the material. That's the left solution. Let's get rid of the material in favor of the spiritual. Oh, you have a drinking problem? Just stop drinking. Oh, you can't stop drinking? Well, we're just going to hide you away. These are both half solutions. We need to put these together. And in order to put these together, we need to find a structure for a psychology. And this is something I want to talk this week about. Aion. Very important book by Carl Jung. Wrote, I think it was one of his later books, I think in the 50s. Jeez, exactly when was this written? Well, I think maybe parts of it were written before, but these are important books, and, you guys aren't going to read them. Not because you're stupid, but you have better things to do on Saturday. I don't. I'm going to read these books. I've actually read Aion a while ago, but I don't know. I think this might just be something good to go over, and I think it relates with the homeless crisis, and the failure of our mental health care system, and what Carl Jung talks about, what he hints at what needs to be done in the future to solve the spiritual crisis of man is something that I was just talking about, how we solve the homeless crisis. So what's the problem? The problem is, and Carl Jung wasn't the first one to point this out. Nietzsche really was. I'm not even sure Nietzsche was, but religion is over. Christianity is over. Belief is over. That thing that was holding society together, that thing that was keeping us structurally bound, is done. It's not really a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah, in the gay science, which I never read because I couldn't stop giggling, but in the gay science, when Nietzsche says God is dead, people have the interpretation that he means that it's a good thing. And then also people say that he means that as a bad thing. I don't think he meant it as a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, this is what is going on. God is dead. We have too much information. We know about evolution now. We have a philosophical, nuanced view of God, right? Just science. It's just exposing too many things. Like, science puts nature on the torture rack and makes her scream, and it's been making her scream for so long that we just can't look at God in the same way. We can't really believe that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. Jesus was crucified to save us. And there's no going back. There's no going back. A lot of traditionalists want to go back to, 1955 or, whatever you think is, or 1855, whatever you think is the best year. There was actually a professor at Fordham who wrote a book called something like The 12th Century Was the Best Century. That was the title of the book. And he thought, we got to go back to the 12th century. But, we got to be honest about it and say, probably not the 12th century, but we got to be honest and say, look, there was a certain structure in society. People knew their roles. There was probably, in a way, less stress, as long as you made it to adulthood without, getting tuberculosis, whatever it was. There was a way less stress, right? People were less stressed. There were roles in society. People didn't fight the king because they thought the king was physically different, metaphysically different. Richard the Lion-Hearted, right? We literally thought that he had the heart of a lion. But again, we put nature on the torture rack. Leonardo started opening up bodies and going, wait a minute. The king's heart is just like my heart. Like, why is he in charge? But we need to evolve, right? We have this information now. So we can't hold on to religion. We can't hold on to Christianity like we did. We need to, in a sense, still, science is good. Jung is saying, yeah, science is good. We like science, objective truth. But for the spiritual health of man, we need a psychological, perhaps subjective truth. Now, religion took care of this, but again, we can't go back. So how do we incorporate these two halves? Right? How do we incorporate the material with the spiritual? How do we incorporate our supposed dark and light into one rational belief structure? Rand's solution was to say that is implies ought. Our nature as a man implies what we ought to do. Same thing with any other animal. You look at a gorilla. Okay, what does a gorilla need to do to be happy? Well, first, let's study the nature of a gorilla. And then we can pretty much surmise a kind of gorilla who's going to be living in a society or habitat that's going to be the happiest for him based on what? Nothing other than the gorilla's nature. We can do the same thing with man. Rand would say we need to be rational to be happy. And I think she's right, but this doesn't get to the real root of the issue. Where does rationality come from? Epistemology, great. Where would that come from? Where would a proper epistemology come from? We need to go to something deeper, a psychological foundation from which we can be more in touch with reality in a healthier way. So this is the dilemma. How do we derive ought from is, in a sense? How do we still get the spiritual foundation? I mean, small s spiritual, this religious foundation, small r religious, even though we know that Jesus really didn't die on the cross for our sins. This is the dilemma, and Jung's answer, well, Jung doesn't give a complete answer. We'll get to what he hints at the answer could be, and it may have something to do with what I was talking about with how to solve the homeless problem. So what's the answer? Well, he talks about a lot of different symbols and then tries to tie them together, and I think he does a pretty good job. Well, he starts off talking about the symbolism of Pisces, right? The age of Pisces. That was the astrological age in which Jesus started. And look, Jung knows that the reason why Jesus is always talking about fish is because it was the age of Pisces. That's in the precession of the equinox, the precession of the zodiac, the age of Pisces. So that is on the equinox, the sun would rise against the what's it called? I was going to say, constellation of Pisces. Why do we develop myth, right? To tell us what stars are doing what, so we know when the buffalo are coming in. We tell stories, we tell myths to describe the stars, because knowing what the stars are doing is really important. But also we need to recognize that, the constellation Pisces doesn't look like two fish. So we project that onto it. We make our sight, so yes, it is practical, but we also project our psyche onto that, and that's what Jung's talking about. So what does the age of Pisces represent? Well, these two fish. Well, what are fish? They swim in water. They're glittering. What's water? It's the unconscious. When they're swimming in water, you ever try to see a fish swim in water? Like, you can't really see it, but you kind of can, and it sort of glitters. And we can only really see them and understand them for what they are when we bring them up into consciousness. And why two of them, representing the two halves of Christ in a sense. There's the Christ, there's the Antichrist, these two halves of man, the spiritual and the material. And Christ reconciled these, supposedly, right? I mean, maybe not literally, but symbolically, he reconciled these two halves as represented by the two fish by dying on the cross. That is what the cross, the hook, represents, the reconciliation of these opposites. Now, the problem here is, this is a great story, and it's unified at least part of humanity for a while, and I understand that Christianity is not the only one that does this. By the way, if you don't know anything about me, I am not a Christian. That doesn't matter, though. In order to solve this crisis of how do we unify the spiritual with the material, in order to solve this, we have to move beyond whether somebody's Christian or what they believe in. It doesn't matter anymore. That's an old way of looking at it. That is a pre-Darwin way of looking at religion. That is pre-Leonardo, looking at somebody's heart and going, wait a minute, why does this peasant have the same heart as this king? So that's part of the problem. So that's what the symbolism is. There is chaos and then there's order. How do we create order, from the chaos? How do we unify these two parts of man? There's always going to be the drive to go back to tradition, but it's not going to happen in that way, right? We know too much. We cannot go back. We got to start looking at things in a different way. And look, I have the book here. Check this out, guys. I'm gonna read some quotations. How about that? This is no. Okay, this may take a while. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is paragraph 285. I would like to emphasize once again that the fish symbol is a spontaneous assimilation of the Christ figure of the Gospels, and is thus a symptom that shows, he says which, I don't like when you say which unless it introduces a subordinate cause, that shows us on the matter of the meaning of the symbol that was assimilated by the unconscious. In this respect, the patristic, it's a great word, patristic allegory of the capture of the Leviathan with the cross as the hook and the crucified as the bait is highly characteristic. A content fish of the unconscious sea has been caught and attached itself to the Christ figure. This is what we're trying to represent. This is what we're trying to do. And up until now, we can really only do it through story, through symbolism. But we got to, really figure this out, exactly how to do it. We need a definite structure to do it so we can train grad schools to go into mental institutions and solve the homeless crisis. We can't just go there and talk about Jesus. Right? The early Christian American settlers tried that with the Indians. It didn't work too well. Didn't exactly lead to the best, the two cultures coming together. There were some issues there. So how are we really going to do this? Well, he hints at it. Carl Jung hints at it. The God image, you realize that this God image that we're trying to unify is ultimately a part of us. And in order to do this, we need to, in a sense, take the material part of our psyche and instead of calling it evil, instead of calling it Satan like we have been, recognize that it's something that isn't bad in any necessary sense, but misunderstood. And we need to bring a new level of understanding to this material part of us. I haven't written my notes here. Crap, I probably should have had the page or the paragraph number written down because it's a pretty good part. But I don't even see my notes here. Yeah, this is strange adjusting to not doing it in front of the camera. That's what I'm going to blame this on. Well, anyways, the point is, as he was saying, we got to look at our unconscious, and instead of calling it evil, instead of symbolizing it as Satan, we needed to call it two other things: feminine and emotional. It is feminine and emotional. There's nothing bad or lower about it. It's no better or no worse than our higher spiritual self that we would call masculine. So we have the unity of dark and light, the unity of feminine and masculine, the unity of material and spiritual, and this will only come through a more proper understanding, through a more concrete understanding of this relationship. All right, guys, check this out. I'm going to do another reading here. Hope this is okay. I hope all this reading, hope all this direct reference to the resource is okay with you guys. All right, and this is from paragraph 308. It is not in a position to make metaphysical statements. It can only establish that the symbolism of the psychic wholeness coincides with the God image, but it can never prove that the God image is God itself, or even that the self takes place of the God. So he's saying that the God image is really a projection of us, but he's saying that even if it's not us, it doesn't really matter. The point is we need to bring the symbolism in on us, because it is only by solving this issue in ourselves do we solve it in society. But in order to do that, we need to come up with a more definite, structure, not his words, but translation from the Swiss German. Maybe not exact. Maybe he would use a word like that. We need to come up with a more definite structure for our unconscious, a more definite structure for our emotions. That's exactly what he's talking about. This is the way forward. This is how to solve the spiritual crisis, which is exactly how do we connect the material with the spiritual? How do we get spirituality without somebody talking about freaking crystals or Jesus dying on the cross or whatever your religion happens to be? But we still need the connection. We still need the structure of that. Take the structure, take the God image, you put it in on us, make it our unconscious. That's what it was anyway. And then you really start to structure it out. You really start to demarcate what parts are doing what. Yeah, what are the fundamental building blocks of this? Have I talked about this before? Let me know if I'm repeating myself, please. Listen to it. Listen to the emotion. Listen to the unconscious. Listen to the feminine. Integrate the Christ conscious, again, not a Christian, doesn't matter, with the shadow impulse. That's how we do this. Jung's telling us exactly what to do. Now, what I have here, what we do here at Animus, what I was talking about in relation to the homeless epidemic, we're working on it. Is it a complete solution? I don't know, but I think it's the next step. It is correct. I know that. I know these are two fundamental emotions, not feelings. They're, again, hexadecimal, whatever, how our emotions combine. We can create seemingly infinite number of feeling states, but emotions, what are the emotions? What are they? How do they work? What are the decisions we can make with those? What happens when we make certain decisions with, each decision with each emotion? Total of 6, 2 times 3. Not too complicated, pretty simple, but difficult, still difficult. And then how do these decisions combine to create our boundary? And from here, the spiritual experience, the religious experience becomes the religious experience of the self, of becoming more literate with your emotions, through which you become more in touch with reality. That sounds gay or feminine or wussy. Well, look, if any kind of masculine quality that you would want, develop a presence, develop a strong boundary, a strong identity, know exactly who you are and exactly who you aren't. This only comes from looking at your supposed, quote, lower feminine material side. It's not one or the other. That's what neurosis is, as shown to us by the mental health crisis that was going on, not just right now, but before 1955 when he started the deinstitutionalization. There's always been a crisis. Now it's just a different kind of crisis. And this has been neurosis throughout, as long as there's been civilization. Or is the siren on top of the masculine sailor, or is the masculine sailor suppressing the siren? These are just two different representations of neurosis. And it's not going to resolve itself until we see how the siren and the sailor, right, very directed, a kind of occupation, how these two are just a reflection of each other. That's all that's going on. And I think it helps by looking at emotions the way that I lay it out. animusempire.com/ebooks. And then, it's not about solving it in society. Jung makes that point. Crap, do I even have that written down? Yeah. Oh yeah, I do. Flipping through the pages. Maybe I'll think of a better way to do this. I know this isn't exactly super fast or anything, but all right, so this is from paragraph 18. So he says this right in the beginning. It's often tragic to see how blatantly a man bungles his own life and the lives of others, yet remains totally incapable of seeing how much the whole tragedy originates in him. This is a direction of where he's going with this book. So what he's talking about is we've been bungling this issue. I mean, we can come up with stories to talk about this issue and how to unify our opposites. That's still kind of a bungle, though. And how he continually feeds it and keeps it going. Yeah, how he keeps the tragedy going. Not consciously, of course. That's actually italicized. Not consciously, of course, for consciously he is engaged in bewailing and cursing a faithless world that recedes further and further into the distance. Rather, it is an unconscious factor that spins the illusions that veil his world. And what is being spun is a cocoon, which in the end will completely envelop him. Exactly. And he's not talking about the individual, he's talking about society as well. You want to solve this problem in society, you got to solve it in yourself. What are you avoiding? What's causing you anxiety? What are you avoiding? How do you face that down directly for exactly what it is, consistently, not intensely? Consistently is just lean on it. Just lean on the anxiety, lean on the anger. What do you need? How do you get those needs met? How do you take this hatred? That's what it's response. You're not getting your needs met. How do you take this and use it in a productive way? This is how we bring the two halves of you together and the two halves of society. All right. Thank you, guys. This has been great. I love doing this. I'm kind of bummed that we can't. Got to get this camera working. Kind of my iPhone working. Although I don't know. Right. I take it as a point of pride that I can't figure out some things with my iPhone. So yeah, just something about me. I just want to complain about my iPhone. There's a new software update. Oh, and now the apps aren't working. Oh, Bill. Oh, Tim Cook. Oh, I'm so surprised. Oh, yeah. Wait. Okay. All right, and I watched Snow White this past, not this past week, but I was watching it before. So Disney Plus is out now, so I'm watching all these old movies that I've never really seen before. And Snow White's an interesting one, and I probably wouldn't be talking about this, but I was talking about 2 weeks ago, The Rise of Skywalker, or The Last Jedi at least. And the problems that I see with those is they're just a bunch of disconnected scenes that doesn't really mean anything. You want to do the most clever, interesting thing in the scene, but as far as the story development and character development, there is none. And I was blown away by Snow White. I've never seen this movie before. So my initial thought was, people just like this because it's member berries, right? It's nostalgia. But this is my first time watching Snow White, and I was blown away. I couldn't believe what a complete movie this was. It's a movie in a sense of a woman's development, and this is what every woman goes through symbolically, and they just hit it. I mean, how long is this movie? This is probably half the length of The Last Jedi, and I know exactly what goes on in Snow. I know exactly the story. I've only seen this once. I think I watched The Last Jedi 3 times. I think I kept watching it just because I hate myself, or I was sick that one time, and that's why I watch it. Yeah, that's my excuse. Yeah, Last Jedi is a great movie to watch when you're sick and you don't really feel like paying attention to anything. Snow White, maybe not so much, because, man, it really deals with some serious issues. But yeah, this is a story of a woman's development. She is relegated, right? So her mom dies, and there's a new queen in town, and it's the evil queen, and so she's relegated to doing chores, right? The purity of water is wasted on her and her doing chores. The man appears. What's his name? Is he Prince Charming? But he appears when she looks down into the well. Of course, the purity of the water. And it's animated very well. The purity of the water. As she peers into that, as she peers into the purity of her unconscious, the man appears. The water, of course, being wasted on these lowly chores. The queen has jealousy issues. She's old and haggard. Well, we'll get to her. So she wants Snow White to die. So the huntsman takes Snow White out in the forest, but he doesn't kill her. Snow White is lucky. I don't know. Is she lucky, or they're just making the point that a young, beautiful woman is more likely to get her way? She has a lot of power. Her defense, in a sense, is her beauty, is her youth. This is a great defense. And I don't blame women at all for taking full advantage of their youth and beauty when they are going through that stage in their life. Things are easier for young women. Scary, as we know in the next scene, because Snow White is facing her demon, so to speak. It's scarier for women, but easier. It's much less scary for men, especially around this time, but it is more difficult. It's not sexist. It's not, society is more misandrous or misogynist. It's just the nature of the sexes and what each one goes through, especially when they're young. Let's just say around 20. And then she meets the 7 dwarves, and this is a great integration of trauma, because she was traumatized because she had to do all these chores, and now she realized, wait a minute, I can do chores. I can help out to make my way in the world. This is a healthy integration of trauma. I have I have a lot of neurosis. I'm trying to think of a good example here. I have a lot of neurosis because my family was crazy, so I had to grow up sooner. I had to be more responsible as a way to compensate for the traumatic childhood. That's exactly what Snow White's doing here when she goes to the Seven Dwarfs cabin. And, they're not there yet, but she's like, I'm going to make myself at home. I'm going to make myself valuable in the world. I know this thing that traumatized me, I'm going to use it in the best way I possibly can. And in a way, I'm integrating that into my psyche in a healthy way. Seven Dwarfs essentially represent Snow White's first seven immature relationships. I mean, these are guys who all have a lot of problems, right? There's, what are they? Grumpy and dopey and grouchy. I don't really know all of them. I don't know dopey. Oh, and happy. Oldie is that one. Anyways, not exactly the best put together guys. They are dwarves representing they're just part of a real man. And they clearly they're out working. They're out working. They're trying to do something valuable, but they can't put the tires to the road. They are literally mining diamonds. And what do they do with the diamonds? They put them in a shed. They're still living in this hut. The most valuable stone. They just put it in this door, behind this door. They lock it, and then they leave the key right outside for anybody to come and take it. Of course, symbolizing codependence. That's what codependence is. I have all this treasure. Come take it. I have all this psychic, the symbolism is usually gold. I have all these psychic diamonds, but I'm gonna show you exactly where the door is. I'll lock the door, but I'll leave the key outside. You can just come in, take my psychic diamonds, essentially make me feel however you want me to feel. Drain my emotional energy. Here, let me walk around with my umbilical cord. I took it away from my mom. Let me walk around with my umbilical cord. This is, a young man, let's say 20, trying to find his first relationship. And the best thing to happen to that young man is to find a girlfriend. Find a girlfriend who's too mature for him, like Snow White is, and to break his heart. That's what needs to happen. And Snow White, meaning these seven dwarves, I mean, I think it perfectly encapsulates what's going on. A lot of symbolism here with her integrating with nature. She, whenever she's on the right track, the animals are there to help her. Whenever she's on the wrong track, like when the witch, the bad queen. Oh, geez, now I forget the name. Do I have it here? Yeah, I think it's just the queen, not the bad queen or wicked witch. What's wicked witch? Oh yeah, that's that's Wizard of Oz. But yeah, the queen, comes and tries to poison her, and then the animals are trying to get her to not eat. The animals know, nature knows, right? Snow White's goodness is used against her. The queen plays the victim. Symbolic in a sense of Snow White. Snow White is taken off track. She is ignoring reality for the sake of socialization. She is taken off track. She is no longer in touch with reality as represented by the animals freaking out. Like expressing an opinion to get along with others. That's exactly what Snow White's going through. The chickocracy. This represents Snow White's chickocracy phase, important phase for her to go through. And then so she goes to sleep. She eats the apple, she goes to sleep. She's not conscious. The queen, by the way. What's going on with the queen? Well, the queen's intelligent, sure. But really, what is exactly going on? I mean, she is rationalizing her envy as intelligence. She's rationalizing her envy. Oh, look at Snow White. She's just young and beautiful. Look at how old and wise I am. Look at all this experience I have. Isn't that the same thing? But really what she is she's just fundamentally jealous of Snow White. And this is exactly what neurosis is, especially when somebody's smart. The reason I'm not appreciated, the reason, nobody understands me because I'm just too intelligent. People cannot understand the depth of my complexity. So you go out and try to connect with people and it doesn't really work. and you think it's because your intelligence, really what's going on is it's your anxiety. It's your inability to connect with people. It's your inability to resonate with people, meet people where they are. Am I talking about myself here? Am I talking about Animus here? Okay, that's part of it. But thank you for not bringing that up. Another iteration on this is people can't deal with me because I'm too real. Oh, just keeping it real. This is what we said in the 90s. No, you just can't communicate. You can't communicate with people effectively. And it probably has something to do with your emotional issues. You probably want to isolate yourself. Are you intelligent? I don't know, maybe. Let's just say the queen's intelligent. It doesn't matter. It's completely beside the point. So, of course, Snow White falls asleep. She followed the crowd. She falls asleep in the crowd. And then how does the man find her? He aligns himself with nature. The man... Is it Prince Charming? Jeez. Let's just say it's Prince Charming. He aligns himself with nature, and what? He just shows up? This doesn't make sense. He just shows up out of nowhere? Yeah, but it does make sense symbolically because, and so we don't, we don't protest it. Because that's how it works. You align yourself with nature, you show up, and the girl's there, and then you kiss her. You don't criticize her for not, getting everything and whatever issue she's doing, like she's into her whole feminism thing. You don't criticize her. You just recognize the woman for what she is. She's asleep and she needs to be woken up, and she can only do that through a connection with the man. And really the man's not happy until he wakes up the woman as well. This is how it works. And what's going on today, though, is the guy's just not showing up. The women are there asleep. And the guys just go, walking, oh, she's asleep. Well, I don't want to date her. She's asleep. She's asleep in some respect. Oh, I'm not going to date her. No, dude, that's not how this works. You're the one who kisses her. You're the one who connects with her, and she wakes up. And then when you wake her up, she pays you back in tenfold. No, what am I getting out of this? No, that's not how this works. As Snow White indicates. Definitely not a Members Berries movie. This means a lot. This is important. And then I read the original Brothers Grimm fairy tale, and it's terrible. I mean, just so many things left out. I mean, the overall structure is the same, but it's very clear that Walt Disney took this. He saw, he took this ore and saw it for the value that it was and changed it around and made it actually mean something. Took out all the extraneous things, just left in the stuff that mattered. And, great stuff. A lot of meaning in Snow White. I highly recommend you go watch it. I mean, I did not think I was gonna like this. I'm like, oh, Snow White, movie from the 30s. Oh, this is a chick movie, but it just transfixes it. Whatever the opposite of what the Last Jedi does is what Snow White does to your psyche. It's just like, oh yeah, this means something. I get it. I don't have to watch this over and over, trying to understand it. And like, oh wait, why did he burn all the Jedi books? What happened right before? It just makes sense. And I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for, not watching this week, but listening. Like and subscribe. Ask me a question, animus@animusempire.com. Free consultation. Then go to animusempire.com /contact. Will point you in some right direction. I can probably help you. I don't have to, but I'll at least point you in some direction. At least take you got to make that first step. I'd like to do it for you. I would. If that was going to be helpful to you, I would like to do it, but it doesn't work that way. You got to make the first step. You got to get to the place where you're in enough pain and you go, am I really ready to integrate my unconscious with my conscious? Am I really ready to look at what's there? Am I really ready to wake up from my sleep? And that's what I am in a sense. I'm Prince Charming coming around kissing I guess man and woman. Hey, whatever. It's get with the times, everybody. All right. Again, animus@animusempire.com. Again, thank you for listening. Yeah. Did I even mention this episode 300? I love doing this, guy. I love talking with you guys. What else do I have to do? What's more important than talking about what's going on in our psychology? I'm really trying to get to the root of it. Nothing's more important than that. So thank you for doing this with me. And again, And then, as always, I should say, I wish you all the joy, all the pain that comes from being in touch with reality.